to the Football for Kids podcast with me, Darren Rees. And welcome to yet another episode on a player with a wonderfully inspiring story. He's an FA Cup winner, a one-club player as a senior, and he's represented his country wearing the Three Lions shirt at the National Stadium under Sir Gareth Southgate. Of course, in this episode, we'll be learning all about the life and journey of Crystal Palace's Tyrick Mitchell. Before we get going, I hope everyone is doing well on the return to school, whether it's the same school as before or a brand new one, especially to those of you who have gone into Year 7. But regardless of what year it is you're going into, remember all the things which we spoke about on the You've Got This series. Be brave. Be brave enough to stick your hand up and ask a question. Or be brave enough to stick your hand up and tell the teacher you don't quite understand and you could do with a bit of help. Be brave enough to speak to someone else you don't know, especially if they're by themselves or looking a bit lost and down. And remember, as long as you try your hardest and you're polite and well behaved, you quite literally can't go wrong. Right then, let's get into it, shall we? Let's dive into the story, the life and the journey so far of 25-year-old Palace number 3, the lad from London, Tyrick Mitchell. Tyrick was born on the 1st of September in 1999 in London, England. Life growing up for Tyrick wasn't the easiest at times. His dad was not often around, and his mum was raising him and his 2 sisters alone. Tyrick has been open in his interviews about life growing up and all things which happened in his childhood, and he said that things weren't the easiest. There really wasn't a lot of money about. He, his siblings and his mum would often move from hostel to hostel, temporary housing to temporary housing, and nothing was quite stable. Although life wasn't the easiest for him growing up, he said that he can look back on those times quite fondly now, and he appreciates the people who were there with him every step of the way. There were people who chipped in to make sure he had a pair of football boots and clothing. There were people who cared about him, and he'll never ever forget that. Tyrick loved football from a young age. He would use it as a form of escape, and his passion grew more and more as time went by, and the more he played the game, the more he loved it. He used to love watching the programme Match of the Day on a Saturday morning, watching some of his footballing heroes making match-saving tackles and scoring worldies. At his time, never did he really think that he may well be on that very programme one day. And, well, of course, he is now on that programme. That little boy who would sit with his legs crossed looking up at the television, if only he knew that in 15-20 years' time, there would be other kids in the same position, staring at a TV and watching him. That is another reminder to always dream big. Tyrick started playing locally, joining his first grassroots team, Pinner Albion. Those who saw him on the pitches at Willesden Sports Centre recall that young Tyrick's talent was undeniable. He was often a class above the other kids, and that was from an early age. The coaches who watched him and coached him knew that he had something special. There was something different about this young man. At around 9 years old, Tyrick got his first taste of academy football with a trial at Watford, but it didn't go smoothly. Life at home was tough. His dad wasn't around, and his mum was working so hard just to try and keep things going. Tyrick struggled to make every session at Watford. He missed lots of training, and in the end, he didn't get a spot with the Watford under-10s. It felt like his shot at being a professional footballer might have just slipped away. But this is where the story turns. At Watford, a scout named John Crayfe saw something special in him, and he wasn't about to let that talent fade away. He picked up the phone and he called a friend of his, Abdi Farah. Farah was a youth coach of a local AFC Wembley. He told him, "You need to look after this kid and don't let him fall out of the game. He's got something. He's super talented." And that is exactly what Farah did. Farah became more than just a coach. He became a mentor and a father figure. Tyrick was shy back then and he barely ever said a word. But Farah never ever gave up on him. He picked him up, he drove him to training, he brought him back home, he taught him discipline, and importantly, he injected self-belief into him. Step by step, he helped Tyrick get back on track. Looking back now, Tyrick says Farah was one of the most important people in his journey. The person who kept him focused, kept him dreaming, and helped him fight for his place in the game. With Farah still guiding him, Tyrick Mitchell stayed at AFC Wembley and kept improving, and soon, bigger clubs started to notice. During a match against Brentford, their academy scouts spotted Tyrick's talent. I mean, everyone that watched him spotted his talent. But by 2012, when he was around 12 years old, he officially became a Brentford Youth Academy player. This was a huge moment. This was all a part of the dream. His first proper step towards professional football. And he made the most of it. Tyrick thrived at Brentford. In 2014, he even helped their under-15s win a youth trophy at the famous Milk Cup tournament in Northern Ireland, a big deal for any young player. But Tyrick was still a teenager, still figuring things out. He loved his football, but he also loved being a kid, hanging out with his mates and sometimes staying out a little too late. And because of that, he didn't always get to train him. This is when his mentors really stepped up. Farah and the coaches at Brentford reminded him over and over, "Tyrick, you've got a real chance here. Don't muck it up. Don't waste it. Sometimes you have to be professional." At the time, Tyrick admits he didn't fully get what football could mean for his life. But bit by bit, with their support, he started to mature, buckle down and dedicate himself completely. However, not long after this, disaster struck. In May 2016, only 2 months after 16-year-old Tyrick had signed his scholarship forms with Brentford, the club made a shocking decision. They would shut down their academy completely, choosing instead to run a B team. For Tyrick, it was heartbreaking. The academy had been his second home, a place where he'd grown up and built on his dreams. That was all he knew. And just like that, in a click of a fingers, it was gone. Overnight, Tyrick went from being a rising academy player to having no club at all. He said, "When it closed, suddenly, I was just a school pupil and not even someone who was at an academy anymore. It was one of the hardest parts of the journey." To make things even tougher, this all happened right in the middle of his GCSE exams. The timing left him numb, and for a while, he tried to block out football, just to cope with the shock. Now, Tyrick's story could have ended there, but it didn't. Even after Brentford's academy closed, he refused to give up. He kept believing in himself, he stayed laser focused on his dreams of becoming a professional footballer, and with his friends and family support, he was back on track. They reminded him that this was not the end and another chance would come, but you have to put the work in and you have to stay ready. Soon, word spread about the talented left-back who was suddenly a free agent. As many as 20 clubs showed interest in signing him. But Tyrick had one rule. He wanted to stay close to home in London so he could keep supporting his mum. Family was so incredibly important. That ruled out plenty of offers, but one club ticked the boxes: Crystal Palace. The Eagles acted quickly, offering Tyrick a trial. He didn't hesitate for a second. This was the opportunity he'd been waiting for, and he took it with both hands and both feet. And in late May 2016, just days after Crystal Palace had played in the FA Cup final against Manchester United, 16-year-old Tyrick Mitchell sat down with Palace's academy director Gary, and a deal was done. So, that summer, Tyrick signed for Crystal Palace's academy. It was the fresh start he desperately needed. At Palace, Tyrick quickly began to shine. By 17 years old, he was a regular for the under-18s, and then the under-23s, helping Palace's youth side win their regional league title in 2017-18. The club already saw him as one of their brightest homegrown stars. Once Tyrick got his chance, he didn't just take it, he made it impossible to take away. The stuff which happened at Watford, the stuff which happened at Brentford, there was no way he was going to allow anything like that to happen at Palace. He quickly became a regular starter for Crystal Palace, impressing everyone with his calmness on the ball and his fearless defending. Week after week, he showed maturity beyond his years. Then came a magical moment at Selhurst Park. It was May 2021, with Palace drawing 2-2 against Aston Villa. Tyrick popped up in the box and scored a dramatic last-minute winner. The crowd erupted. At just 21 years old, this defender became Crystal Palace's youngest league goal scorer in 23 years. He was the youngest since Clinton Morrison all the way back in 1998, the year before he was born. By the 2021-22 season, Tyrick was thriving under legendary player Patrick Vieira, who was then the boss and the manager of the Eagles. Things were going super well at Palace, but they were about to get even better because Tyrick Mitchell's hard work had paid off in the biggest way possible. In March 2022, after a run of brilliant performances for Crystal Palace, he got the call every footballer dreams of. A call to represent your country at the National Stadium. It was extra special. Tyrick had never played for England even at a youth level. This was the very first time representing his country. When the news came through, he was lost for words. He was overjoyed. He couldn't quite believe what was happening. He immediately rang his mum to tell her that their shared dream had finally come true. Then came the moment that made it all real. On the 26th of March 2022, Tyrick stepped onto the pitch at Wembley Stadium to make his England debut against Switzerland. For him, it was a true storybook moment. He'd grown up so close to Wembley that he could hear the roar from the crowd when a goal went in. His mum and sisters were in the stands that day, watching proudly as their brother, their son, wore the England shirt for the very first time. Tyrick continues to do wonderful things at Crystal Palace. He's a manager, a teammate, and a fan favourite. And that is the story of Tyrick Mitchell so far. From moving between hostels with his mum and his sisters, to being turned away from Watford, to watching his dreams slip away at Brentford when they closed their academy. Every single step could have been the end of his journey, but it wasn't. Why? Because Tyrick never ever gave up. He kept believing in himself. He listened to the people around him, those that cared about him. He worked harder, and he was brave enough to just keep going. And look at him now, a Premier League star, an England international, someone you can watch on Match of the Day, a role model for kids all around the world. So, if you ever feel like things aren't going your way, if you ever feel like the odds are stacked against you, remember Tyrick Mitchell and his story. The story's never over unless you decide it is. And if you know someone who loves football just as much as you do, then please tell them about the Football for Kids podcast. And whether you're playing football soon, watching it on the telly, or pitchside, I hope that you enjoy the game. See you next time.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.